Dave Grossman is the rowing director and boys head coach at Saugatuck Rowing Club. His rowing career began there in 2005. He quickly began coaching as well in the Learn to Row program. Dave was a 4-year varsity member of the Hobart College rowing team, competed numerous times at the head of the Charles Regatta, National Championships, Henley Royal Regatta. He's been on the coaching staff at Saugatuck Rowing Club since 2011. And Dave, welcome to 06880, the podcast.
Thank you so much, Dan. It's such a pleasure to be here with you today, and I look forward to our conversation.
Cool. So how did you get introduced to rowing? It's not a sport that every kid knows about or takes to.
Yeah, no, I guess I was fortunate. I always heard about it as a kid. My pediatrician, I grew up in Norwalk. My pediatrician, he's a big supporter at the Norwalk River Rowing Club, and I'd always hear him talk about it. Then I had a couple of friends that did it in high school. I didn't really have, I guess, I used to play basketball in middle school. That was my favorite sport, and kind of lost my passion for that and didn't really have much going on for my outlet for sports in high school. And my friends convinced me to come down to practice one day, and it was either I was going to go to Norwalk River Rowing with one of my friends, or I got in the car and my friend took me to Saugatuck, and it was a really fortunate, lucky day for me, where it's kind of propelled the rest of my life.
And the rest is history.
Yeah.
So what kept you going back? What'd you do that first day, and what really got to you?
The first day was a little bit more of a negotiation with my coach. I missed the sign up by a couple of days. And he said the program was full and that there was going to be, I had to go with the younger kids and learn how to row first. And, I negotiated well with him, I guess, and he let me kind of stick around for the next couple of days to prove myself. And but it was more just seeing everyone's excitement for just being out on the water and just it's a new experience. I call rowing, it's one of those interesting things where I guess a surfer or a skier, where you're just in the environment and you get this feeling once the boat moves. And I'm assuming that's the same thing when you're standing on the surfboard or going down a mountain, and just that, like, the energy just takes over, and it's hard to explain that feeling until you do it.
But you're making the boat move. Yes. And you're making it move with other people.
Yes, and that mainly we were in 8-person boats with a coxswain. So there's 9 people total, and it's that teamwork that you all have to do everything exactly together. And that was the other thing that I liked, coming back from kind of the way my brain works on kind of precision. And I guess I like that idea of, well, the better we work together, that team side of it, and just that precision that really takes over. And the other big surprise is everyone says it's wow, because they're used to kayaking, a big arm sport. It's actually it's mainly your legs. 90%
really?
Comes from your
power from your legs.
Yeah, and then you're just continuing your motion.
Who knew? Is there a particular type of person who's attracted to rowing?
Yes and no. I mean, technically, when the people that are going to be more successful on like the Olympic level, you're going to look at that and say, wow, it's somebody that's on the guy's side that's 6'5" and lean and strong. And so, yes, being tall is it helps, especially in the long run and all of that. But I would say usually we tend to see more on kids kind of a similar background to me, where it was one of those things where they weren't succeeding anymore at their other sports, or they needed a break, or unfortunately nowadays where if they're playing other sports, they might have gotten a concussion or two and they need to look ahead to their future a little bit more on those side of things. And so we get a variety of different types of kids and adults that were attracted, mainly because they're looking for something new.
And is there a certain type of mentality that you need, a certain way of looking at things?
Yeah, it definitely helps to kind of have a really competitive edge where, let's go with this. Even me casually working out now, I have a lot of stats that kind of come in, and every day I have to kind of do better. It's one of these things I have to kind of talk myself down and say it's okay to have a lighter day. And that's one of those things that I think that really is something that rowers thrive when they get to be very competitive, because the race comes down to a few milliseconds sometimes, and it's a 2,000 meter race that's 6 minutes long, and it literally comes down to down to a second. So just an example, this last weekend we were racing in Boston, and our top boys boat, they placed 7th out of 85 boats. There was 2 English boats that beat us, but the boat that was directly ahead of us, they beat us by 0.4. And it was a 14-minute race, a little more than 14 minutes. So you're literally coming down to just having your perfect race.
And going backwards the whole time.
Yes, and that's where you're fortunate where you get that coxswain. And I always say another good trait for the rowers is trust in your boat, trust in your coxswain, but turning your brain off, not overthinking, just doing your job. Each person has a different job in the boat, and letting the coxswain steer and communicate through the whole race on where you are, and everyone else is just pushing as hard as they can.
So what type of kid becomes a coxswain? Is that a different type of person?
Yes, they tend to be on the smaller side because you don't want to add too much extra weight, but it doesn't really. The best coxswains are the ones that kind of have they also understand the competitive edge, so they can identify with the athletes. They understand what they're asking of the athletes. Sometimes you get kids or adults that don't have a background in sports, and they don't understand what they're asking of their athletes. And so that's where they lose a little bit of that connection. But usually it would be someone on that smaller stature that's just really outspoken that would kind of really go a long way. And they build their confidence as they get better. And so you don't have to outright have that confidence because they start at such a young age, and just it'll come.
So you started out at Saugatuck Rowing in 2005. It was sort of the early years of the club. What was your experience like there? What were the highs and lows as you rowed in high school?
Yeah, I started later than most. The sport's evolved a lot in the last 20 years, where back then, my first year, everything was new. I was the first season, you always start out, we call it your novice season. So everybody that's within their first year of racing, once you start your first race, you have a year of eligibility. And so I raced with the novices that first fall, where you're just kind of going out there and everything's a new experience. You're like, oh, race? What is this? So, and then in the fall, it's more kind of, everything is timed, so you don't start side by side, so you don't see another boat sometimes during the race. And so it's this new surprise, and you're like, okay, we went. It was a successful race where we didn't hit anything, and we finished the race, and you're like, oh, you won. And like these little surprises were just like, wow, I have no idea. Then you're on the rowing machine and people are telling you, wow, you did really well on that. You're like, I have no clue. I'm tired, but it's just this whole new exciting experience. And the first year it happened quickly, and I'm grateful for just having that experience. But things are a lot different now in the sense where there's a lot more science and education that kind of goes into it, where it would be very hard nowadays for a person when I was a junior to jump into it and then have success their first year. Where we ended the year, the most important race of the year for them, the junior side, is youth nationals. You have to qualify at regionals for that, and you're top 3 or top 4 depending on the year. And we qualified. We placed 5th in the country, and that would just be a very hard feat now to do because there's so many more teams, and just it's really great to see how competitive the sport has grown. So,
and you got to travel a lot?
Yes, the fall is a little less travel intensive, where there's a lot of local races. We'll call Hartford, Derby. We're going to Philadelphia next weekend. We were in Boston, so we called that our local schedule. Then in the spring, we travel to New Jersey a lot. We end in Florida. Sometimes you're out in California, and so it's this exciting thing. Especially for me, as when I was a kid, I didn't travel too much. I went on a couple cruises, but that was it. And so it was just great to kind of see. Our nationals that year was in Ohio, and it was just kind of besides the excitement of the sport, it's always great to spend a week with your teammates, and it's a whole good bonding experience that I don't know if you get at other sports necessarily.
I mean, I know I had friends in college who were rowers, and getting up at 4 a.m. and going out on the freezing river, and they really did have a special bond.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then I always remembered we practiced in the morning in college. And I always remember coming into the cafeteria to eat after that, and I'd be surprised and just thinking, wow, how much look how much we accomplished already. And everyone else is just getting up and starting their day. And we've already had 2 or 3 hours of practice. And, it just kind of made you feel, I guess confident is a good word on that one. You felt like you achieved something rather than just sleeping in.
And you're hungry.
Very hungry, yes.
The kids who are rowing now at Saugatuck Rowing, they do morning workouts as well before school, right?
Yes. Not when they're first starting out. We usually have our top boats. Usually when they turn into their sophomore year and they start working their way up into the top 2/8. So that would be the top 16. We add on we'll call it a quick morning practice. Usually we're not on the water because it's so dark and there's so many variables with different times with school starting, and because we have kids from all over, literally from New York City down to New Haven. So there's a lot of different time periods of when kids need to get to school. So we usually give them an hour workout in the morning twice a week, and that's usually either weights or just on the rowing machine. And some of the kids that live further away, they'll do that on their own. But just that's what I meant by there's so much more that goes into the sport now. In order to be successful, you have to kind of spread your workload out more, and recovery, and we talk about sleep, just all these fun things that kind of play into the big picture on all of that.
Yeah, the rowers that I've spoken with, they talk about all that. They talk about the confidence, they talk about nutrition, they talk about sleep, talk about time management, camaraderie.
I'm always surprised, yeah, especially when you have it's always surprising to me when I have a kid that starts out as a freshman or a sophomore, and the parents like, oh, we're not sure how this is going to work because they're really struggling at school to get all their work done and balance everything. So this is a large commitment because usually we have a 90-minute program that meets 3 times a week that they would have been in. They're like, we're really struggling kind of with just doing that. And then once they get through their first fall or the winter, and something about it, just their brain changes and they just go home and I guess they get off their phone and they take care of business, or they find ways to get it done in their free periods at school. And it's always just surprising saying, wow, you were struggling before, and now it's just that's one of those big rewards.
Yeah. So talk about the coaching. How'd you get into that?
I was lucky. I was forced into it on one aspect. At Saugatuck, that was another factor that played into my decision on where to go and all of that. And that's what I also meant. There was a negotiation with my coach, and I was really grateful for James. He gave me a scholarship to be able to row, and part of the scholarship was in the summer you're gonna have to come back and you're gonna be our intern. You're gonna coach there was different middle school groups, and you're gonna coach the summer camps in the summer. And so that was my first taste of that, where there was 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon. You had different groups of like 20 to 30 kids, and we'll call it kind of chaotic at times, where there's just a lot of excitement with that age group, and you have to figure out how to do everything safely and convince them that to hold your excitement back at different times where they need to pay attention, so the equipment's not damaged, and so they obviously are in good hands on that side of things with not getting hurt or anything like that. But it was that excitement that kind of kept building. Then the next summer I did it again, and then the next summer, and then I graduated from college, and it was time to, I guess, everyone always says, oh, you're going to get a real job. So
put on your big boy
pants. So I got a real job, and I was working as in senior housing and healthcare on stuff that I had no clue about. I didn't study that in college, and learning about, just things that I wasn't super interested at the time. And I would do that from 7 to 3, and then go out and coach. And after a couple of years, I just realized how much more meaningful seeing the athletes develop and seeing just kind of who they were becoming became more important than having a real job. But I just go back to saying I just got really lucky with having that opportunity of being forced into it. Because if I wasn't forced into it, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now.
And your life would be very different.
Yeah.
So what, as a coach, do you do? You teach technique, you teach strategy. How do you do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're fortunate where there's different levels of what you're learning, in the sense that Going back to where those kids that were practicing 2 or 3 times a week with their 90-minute sessions, they're learning the basics right then. When they turn 11 or 12, that's usually when a lot of them will start there, and it's a fun experience in that side of things. We don't put pressure on like, oh, get on the rowing machine, let's see how hard you can press for right now. That we do that in a fun way. It's not a test in a way. And so that group, that there's just a lot more repetition on just kind of understanding, wow, we're moving backwards right now, and I've got to get this oar between my legs when I'm coming up. And so just kind of getting used to, I'll even say this, at that age, getting used to how your body is just grown. You're going through puberty and different things like that. And so some of those kids, they'll grow a couple inches every couple of weeks, or it seems like, fortunate for them at that time. But they're just literally getting used to how their body's moving, and then it evolves from there. And when then they work their way up to kind of the kids that I spend a lot of my time with, the top end athletes on the competitive team. There's just a lot of it's interesting. On my side, you don't have a plan each year. Like, you have a overall arching plan. You have a training plan that you develop, but each day you just kind of have to see, how are they rowing? What do we need to do to make this better? And it's just one of those things that you've learned over time on, this is a really important drill to do right now. And even just hearing them go by, literally hearing them, I can tell how the boat's going. And so the kids, I don't think understand me when I'm saying, wow, it sounds really good right now. They're like, what is he talking about? But the boat makes this little sound because it starts to hydroplane off the water, and it lifts up, and you can just hear the water running underneath it. And it's this swooshing sound. And when it's not moving fast, you don't get that swooshing sound. And it's fun in the sense too, on coaching and strategy and all of that, where you get currents. We're on the Saugatuck River and there's a tide. And so that switches every day. It's at a different time. It's 58 minutes or something like that every day. So you don't even have the same practice tomorrow as you had today. And so it's interesting on that side. But strategy, there's a race plan that comes up. So each season's different. The spring is the most important, where we do 2,000 meter races. And then there's a strategy there where you have 6 to 8 boats across. And we have our race plan, and then that's where you have to trust that coxswain, where I always say, hey, this is what we're going to do right now. And then I'll say, take over. What is your natural instinct? Like, when do we have to start for our sprint? And we need to push harder right here because we have to stay in the pack, or we're up. And there's just a whole interesting side. And that's where it's really fun to enable the athletes. And when they get to me, where that coxswain becomes so important. The better we do is usually when our coxswain is the best that they are, because that's the person out there with them during the race. Wow. So
that's why they throw them in the
yes, when they're done, they get that joy of getting thrown in after.
Do you see the sport differently as a coach than you did when you were rowing in a boat?
Yes, I mean, it's funny as an athlete in the sense that you're really focused on what you're doing, and you think you're the most important person in that event you're in, because there's different events. You're either in the top boat, and there's 8-person boats, 4-person boats, 2-person boats, 1-person boats. And so when I was an athlete, at whatever race I was in, I was like, oh, this is the most important thing. And you're just really, you're only at the race course for a short amount of time. But as a coach, you get to just, you see the whole big picture of kind of, wow, we have races at 7 a.m. and the last race goes off at 4. And so there's just this bigger perspective on how important the whole team is. And sometimes you just get caught up as an athlete on kind of what you're trying to achieve with your boatmates at the time. And so that's one thing that I always like to remind the athletes. And I always say, we're the fastest team we're going to be when we're all working together, when we care about every person on the team. And that goes into kind of our motto that we developed. It's all of us or none of us. And literally, you're as fast. We look at it as the boat the top boat. The kids in the second boat are pushing the kids in the top boat. If they have a great day, maybe they beat the guys in the top boat, and that gets the guys in the top boat annoyed, and they're going to try harder, and they're going to figure another way out. And it's that domino effect all the way down. And so that's one thing that I've personally learned to kind of push more, is how important the whole is, because having 1 or 2 top athletes isn't going to be that fun for the whole team, and you're not going to be successful.
At Saugatuck Rowing, do you work at creating this feeling that, you talk about we're all in it together? Mm-hmm. Is it a feeling of, the older kids and the younger kids, the boys and the girls. Do you intentionally work at that?
That is the goal. The tricky part is I wish we could do better with the boys and girls doing things together. There's so many athletes. On the boys side, we have about 75 or 80 athletes, and the same on the girls side. And so we struggle to kind of do things together because we don't have enough space for that. So we think out of the box on different things. But that is an intentional thing. My favorite part about the winter, we're all trapped indoors for the most part, and we have the whole boys team. They do every workout together. Right now, and when you're on the water, you'll have that novice group that I mentioned. They are kind of learning something different, so they're off with their coach, and every boat's kind of with a different coach. And so sometimes you meet up and you'll do pieces when you're on the water. But in the winter, they literally do everything together. The top end athletes will have extra workouts in the morning, or some of the pieces will change slightly and add an extra one on if it doesn't make sense for the other athletes to do. But it's just everybody gets put together. And then one of my favorite things we do, each piece, so they're all lined up, and then we call it King of the Hill. And so you'll do a piece, and then you get reshuffled based off of how you did on that last piece. And so it just shows consistency, but everyone gets to kind of move around, and it takes a little longer. You get more rest, but I feel like that is one of the best things we do to kind of build that team camaraderie. And then you understand, wow, that piece mattered. And then sometimes the kids will go really hard for one piece, and then they'll fall off, and then it just teaches them how to be consistent as well. But yeah, that's something we intentionally try to focus on.
Is there a difference between coaching girls and boys?
I would imagine. I've really only coached boys for the most part. When I was coaching more of the middle school groups and things like that, we'll go with this. The girls tend to mature a little bit quicker. Their brains, from what I've read on science and different things like that, and so they tend to be a little bit more focused early on. And I think that would be a helpful thing that I sometimes hope and wish that I had it in some scenarios. But I think other than that, it's not too different.
Do you work with the adults as well? I
do, yes, and all different age ranges there. And one of my groups is right outside our window right now. They're going by on, I guess I don't know if that's the river or not, wherever the river is.
It's right there.
Yeah, and so when I was walking in, I had another coach fill in for me today, and I got to see them. They were out in their one-person boats, and we've got one guy in the group and 4 or 5 women, and I coach the adults, and there's all different types of groups that we have for that.
And you've got adults who are rowing who came to it late, right?
Yes. Yeah. No, and you'll have 2 different groups of adults. You'll have a group that they rowed in college, and they'll try to find the sport usually when they're in their 40s, when they're like, oh, my kids are finally going back to, they're old enough to get up on their own and things like that. You'll have an athlete in the past that was like, oh, I'm a cyclist, or I've done something else, and that's what draws them to the sport. But most of the time, we tend to get adults that once they're retired, they look at it and say, this is going to be my new thing that I'm doing. And it's something that maybe they've been thinking about the whole time. And it's funny the amount of times that I hear from people when we row underneath the railroad bridge, and they say, yeah, I've been watching you every day for the last 20 years. And you just go, wow, okay, here's your time. Then it puts a little bit of pressure on you. You're like, okay, they're going to have a great experience. But it's one of those things that I know that once they sit in the boat and they get going, they're going to have that experience.
So what, now it's 2 decades with Saugatuck Rowing, any standout moments, anything that really makes you say that, this is why I love what I do?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, like we could say when we raced in England 2 years ago, and so that was a great achievement on that side of things, or different medals we've won. But it really, there's 1 or 2 kids that I think of specifically, just watching their maturity and seeing them come through the program, and not being able to communicate at all, and in the sense that they couldn't advocate for themselves. And it's those moments where I watched them each year being better communicating at me. Like literally, there was one kid where I was like, hey, I'm talking to you right now. Anytime I'm talking to you, can you just look at me? Like, it's a good thing for you. It'll just acknowledgement and things like that. And, saying it in a nice way. And then You can start to see as I'm talking more and more times, and then now they're off being leaders and this kid specifically is off. He's in stroke seat of his boat in college, and it's just really great to see him being a leader. Stroke seat's the person that leads the boat with the rhythm, and that tends to be probably one of your better athletes. And so it's just really great to kind of see him off in college doing that, but also just knowing that now when he talks to other people, he can advocate for himself. And those are my most important moments from looking back.
It's, I think any coach will say things like that. It's not the wins, the individual wins and the losses. It's the entire, the entirety of it. Typical day, is there such a thing for you?
My schedule's a little different since I'm the rowing directors, but usually we'll start out in the morning. I'll coach probably for 3 hours with the adults. And then I guess I'll say another thing that really I love about Saugatuck, our owner, Howard Winklevoss, he always has interesting side projects that I'm allowed to help with. And so there's different things where he starts, like right now he's got 2 new rowing programs that he's working on. We've partnered with the University of Bridgeport. We're starting it's called Row America. So there's a Row America Bridgeport that we're starting, and his goal on that is just to and our goal we're trying to spread rowing out to as many people as possible, and we can see that there's no rowing team for the kids in the high school kids and middle school kids in Bridgeport, so we wanted a community program that we're working on developing there. Anyways, there's just a lot of unique things where I get to be involved with, and then get to the end of the day with coaching the competitive kids, but I'm very fortunate on that side of things to have such a great owner that always kind of has our best intentions. I know you didn't ask this, but I'm going to go into a little bit more about our owner in the sense that I've learned a lot in those 20 years too from seeing how he's treated me, and it's really helped me kind of with my management and on others. Mr. Winklevoss's big thing is he puts people in places that he knows that can be successful, that he trusts, and he lets them do what they need to do without asking a lot of questions. If you need help with anything, he's always there to help you and help you through that path. But he lets you fail sometimes. He lets you, like, if you're literally like, hey, I've got this great idea. We're going to be able to bring the rowing to all these new kids. He's like, go for it. And so I'm really fortunate to be in that situation. And that's what I've learned to be successful, is also just allowing the people around me to do their thing and, help them, guide them, but let them be the boss in that sense, and hold them accountable when there needs to be accountability. But letting people do their thing is really important from what I've learned.
It's what a good leader does.
Yeah.
And his kids, Cameron and Tyler, the famed Winklevoss crypto billionaire twins.
Yes,
they've been involved in the program as well, right?
Yeah, and that was another unique thing as a younger athlete when I was in high school. Seeing them at that time, they were in Harvard, or maybe they were I think they were juniors or seniors in Harvard, and I'd see them come and train in the summer, and just having people to look up to like that as an athlete and
Olympic rowers.
Yeah, future Olympic rowers at that point, and from all the unique things that they also bring to the table on that side of things, and the big. They were the reason that my boss is my boss now, and he wouldn't have bought the rowing club without them getting into the sport and convincing him that they needed to save the Saugatuck Rowing Club and build the building that it is today.
So last question, 25 years for the Saugatuck Rowing Club. What's ahead for the next 25?
Picturing big things in the sense that the sport's going to keep developing. Each year we're finding ways to add more athletes. I wish we had a bigger building. We're working on that, but it's one of those things of trying to. I'm really excited to see more kids become leaders because they were rowers and going out into the world and being successful at college, their future jobs, and maybe a couple more future Olympians. And that is my big goal. One of the things that I talk with and strive with the other coaches is making sure that their highlight isn't the Saugatuck Rowing Club, in the sense that this was the best that they've ever done at the sport or best they've ever done at anything, that we're just a path to enable them to be better at whatever they choose. Or if that's the rowing in college, hopefully they'll win a lot of medals there and then going off to the Olympics. Or if they don't row in college, maybe they're going to start a new club or be a leader of some sort of doing something. And that is our biggest goal. And I'm excited to see those future leaders. Maybe they'll be a president. Who knows?
And the Saugatuck Rowing Club does it well. Dave Grossman,
Yes,
rowing
thank you.
director, boys coach at the Saugatuck Rowing Club. Thanks for coming off the water and spending some time on land here in the Westport Library today.
Thank you. My pleasure.